past is history, the future mystery. This moment is the gift. Every second.
It is Dr. Sarah Larsen on air for you. I had a little bit of coffee and I'm ultra excited. So I might be talking fast today, and I'm so excited to be on a date with my miracle maker husband, Greg Larsen.
I'm excited to be on a date too, my love.
We have just been having the greatest time lately, and part of that is thanks to you guys. We are getting your feedback. We've gotten the numbers on the shows, and we've gotten from our website feedback, from YouTube, from iTunes, and we're so, so grateful. You guys are miracle makers for us. Thank you so much. That song that you just heard is Greg Larsen singing "This Moment is a Gift." And today, oh gosh, if you're alive and you're able to hear this, wherever you might be, I know you're going to feel the gift that we are presenting for you. We've got in studio with us a psychotherapist that studied quite extensively and integrated world knowledge into the beginner's guide to happiness. And we're so excited. Today you're going to hear a lot of stories, a lot about beliefs, a lot about how to shift into being who you're here to be, and how to trust the voice within yourself, that inner guidance that's always speaking. What else are they going to hear, baby?
I don't know. I want to go back to me singing you that song. We're on the way to the studio today. We were reading a book, and it was like all these things. Husband, well, do you do this as a husband? Do you do that as a husband? Like, I don't do that enough. I want to sing you more songs, and I want to buy you more flowers, and I want to surprise you with gifts of affection, because you're such an amazing human being, and I'm so blessed you're in my life, and I'm so blessed you're my partner, my wife, and the mother of our children. Thank you. And I want to say that 1,000 times a day. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, baby, thank you. We get to do this together. It's the most beautiful experience to be able to share this time with you, to share this with others. Thank you for saying yes to being on air and being on a date with me every week. We lead such busy lives. We truly have a 9-year-old, our 11-year-old, right now 4 puppies and a dog. You coach so many things, all the sports teams that our kids are on, and the various shows and things that we do, all the clients that we see and help. And so this time is precious, and we love being able to share that with Ira Israel, who's here in the studio with us, the Beginner's Guide to Happiness. Welcome, Ira. It's so, so beautiful. That's a little bit of a funny way to bring you in. Part of the reason that I want to bring as much conversation with you in is our audience, miracle makers from around the world, are really hungry for the ideas that we talked about just a little bit ago. What is the meaning of life? What is it to study all these different faiths? What's happiness? What are beliefs? And we're grounded in our stability as a couple, that we can go around the world, travel, and we know who we are. No image out there, no energy out there could separate our knowing of ourselves or how we show up for one another. And we cultivated that, myself as well, through lots of studies. You've studied so much. You have such a beautiful story. Why do you want people to have happiness? And why have you created DVDs to happiness and meditations and mindfulness practice?
Well, I was set on a journey many years ago that I didn't know that I was going on. And as I mentioned, I needed to find, firstly, the meaning of life. So for all these years, I I traveled and I got a master's degree in philosophy, so I just spent years reading. And then I was living in Paris at the time, and I took a trip to Thailand, and I got hurt. And a woman healed me with her hands, which was completely outside of my paradigm. And that got me interested in Buddhism and Hinduism, and then eventually coming back to the States and studying Kabbalah also, which I did. And then I took a master's degree in religious studies so I could study all of those, as well as the history of yoga and mindfulness. And then after about 8 years, I ended up in a relationship that could have been a lot healthier. So I started studying psychology and the patterns in our lives and the things that cause unhappiness. And I had also gone to film school and gone to yoga teacher training and been studying at Spirit Rock and all these places. And I tell people very honestly, if you looked at my life from the time I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 1988, for about 25 years, you would say, oh, that's cute. He's lost. He meditates and he lives in Paris and he studies these things that we can't see any value in, and blah, 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 blah. And then I was teaching at Rodney Yee's yoga studio in Oakland, and a woman came into the class, and there was just something about the way she put her hands down and her back opened up. And I'm not as mystical as some of maybe your viewers are, but I literally heard a voice or was told, like, you have to make DVDs. And so those 25 years where it seemed to be, from the outside, I was meandering or just following my gut. Like I was like, one day I had to see an artwork, so I would go to Spain, or I would go someplace and I would study something, and I would take classes. And I just asked people questions because I was just always curious. And then, in different situations, most of the time when people ask these questions, it's from tragedy, like bad things happen. Why did my grandmother get sick? Why did my dog get sick? Why did my child get sick? Why did I get sick or hurt or injured? And then it causes you to go to, well, I take all of our beliefs that we believe or we're taught as Americans, like if you become rich and get a sexy partner and do this 2.3 kids, you'll be happy. And once other things happen that take you off that course, I call it like the path to personal growth or evolution. But once you take the first couple of steps down the path, you really can never go back. You can't just anesthetize yourself and say, no, I'm going to just make money because whatever, like once you start this, and to answer your question about the meaning of life, I think that at some point in time, we all, like you two, get this thing that says, okay, I'm overflowing, I have to give back. And then it's like I have to teach, or I have to heal for what you do. I have to just ease other people's suffering. And so, as I said, for me, I think I was indulgent for 25 years because I was just like a sponge and I just wanted to learn. So I just read. I went to the movies every day because I was just, that medium was so fascinating to me. And I had like a schedule to study classical music. I put off studying Mahler till I was 30. I knew like I should study Wagner. Like I had this whole trajectory of like literature and music and film, and I was just really voracious. My appetite was just like, I just had to know things. And then at some point in time I was like, okay, I'm overflowing, and now it's time to interact with people and learn through teaching, which is like I'm when I teach at Esalen, there was a beautiful New York Times interview with the CEO, and he said, you only have one choice. You can either hire people who are not as smart as you and micromanage them, or you can hire people who are smarter than you and learn from them. And so I try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me. And I'll always say, like, I'm the weakest link. Because I just want to learn. So I'm in a very privileged position where I get to call people up and either interview them and write articles about them, or invite them to teach at Esalen and at other places with me, and then I get to sit there and learn. So
that's so beautiful. I love your share. So, miracle makers, whatever process that you're wandering into and whatever you're interested in and learning about, follow that, is what Ira Israel is saying.
It's a rabbit hole.
It's a rabbit hole. The reason that you started down the rabbit hole started with a miracle, being saved from a car accident.
Well,
or
I was. It's interesting because part of my course is languaging and how you choose to express yourself. But there was a very bad car accident on January 4th, 1984, and a gentleman was called into the hospital to amputate my leg because it was so badly mangled. And he had just read about this thing called the Zickel nail apparatus in Switzerland, and it was probably like 5 a.m, and he probably had better things to do than to be called into the hospital and amputate some 18-year-old's leg. But he just was like, I'm going to try something new. And they saved my leg. And then what happened was, when I did live in Paris in 91, I was walking up and down 7 flights of stairs a day, Monetize, 7 flights of stairs, and I was writing a lot. And so I say, I had to go up and down the stairs like 20 times a day to collect my rejection letters, because when you're a writer, that's what you mostly get by the mail. And so on January 5th of that year, I said, wow, like this would be really lot less fun if I had one leg. Like I should write Dr. Rhoda a letter and just tell him what I did that day. And said I walked up and down the stairs 20 times, and I walked around the Jardin de Luxembourg, and I went for coffee. And I couldn't have done that if you had taken the road more traveled. So just thank you. And I did that for. I've never stopped doing it, and so it's been 30. I think it'll be 32 years. And I speak with the man I affectionately call the guy who didn't amputate my leg.
Yes.
And so my whole, it's like life is incredibly simple. Like you just, as you know, if you teach happiness, be grateful. There's 3.5 billion people living on less than $1.50 a day. I mean, just the ability to be here and drink clean water and have a roof over our heads. It's just like, we're the most privileged, less fortunate human beings to ever walk planet Earth, and we have like the lowest happiness. They're miserable. Everyone's on Prozac and Xanax and all these things in our community out here because they don't know how to cultivate. They don't know what tools to use, and they keep on looking on the outside for things that inevitably don't satisfy that hedonic treadmill, which your mind is of. As soon as you have something, you're going to want something else. But, you guys dating after being married is so ideal because that's what you have to. There's no there, as Gertrude Stein said. You just every day you got to get up and do your practice, and your practice is your marriage.
Definitely.
It's so beautiful. There's so much that you broke and shared. Is there anything that you want to share that stood out for you?
One thing, when I was listening to your journey, it sounds like you were listening to your heart. It might not have made sense from other people's perspective, and you could have let their judgments affect you, but instead you just listened to your own heart, which we've been working on so much lately, is being able to tune in to that wisdom and that guidance of the heart. And following that, because you might go, well, what is this all leading to? We don't really know, but ultimately, it can come to that point, and then the light bulb turns on. It's like, wow, that's what I'm being called to do. That's what I'm being called to serve. And then you step into that powerfully because you've been following your heart.
So the distinction between people who do things for money, which are jobs, and people who do follow their vocation. So voco in Latin is calling. And I, besides being a psychotherapist, I'm a licensed professional counselor, and the one distinction is being able to do career counseling.
Yes.
And I honestly think that, and I, I had to take all these courses on it and do all this, take these tests, and I think it's junk, personally, because it's just basic existentialism. What are you doing on planet Earth? God willing, you have 87 years here, and, it's just, you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and you're going to be like, okay, like, what is this all about? And so for me...
And so many people are... please finish that statement. And for me...
learning like what your calling is and what is going to keep you at the high end of your happiness range. And I just know that being of service to others, helping other people, whether it's like just helping a blind person across the street or helping your own children learn math, like that is how you, or having your marriage be your practice.
Yes.
That's how you lead a meaningful life, by making that commitment. I mean, and this segues perfectly into what you want to talk about, beliefs, because it's like, it's a choice. And you say, this is my practice. My practice is my my yoga practice, my meditation practice, my marriage, my raising my children. I was put on this earth to raise beautiful children. That's it. Whatever it is, but just know what it is and have conviction.
There's so much that you've shared, and I want to break this down in so many ways. That conviction, the meaningful life. As children, we're given so many instructions in school and the process that we grow up in, whether you're in a third world country, which I was born in, where most people have, and luckily I was blessed to be in a wealthy family, blessed in so many ways, but I too was left for dead at some point. And that ability to really know and be in search for what is the meaning of life, and to make that more personal, what is the meaning to my life? Right. What's the meaning to my life? And at the time when I was saved, it really being able to say, being of service. I have my life here and I choose to be of service, to go to med school, then to really cultivate the energy of becoming not just a allopathic healer, but a true healer, like the hands miraculously shifting the energy. Or the story that you shared of the yoga practitioner that came in and spread her hands and fingers, and a voice being heard, helping you identify and know your own, what is the meaning to your life? What's the meaning to all that you've done? It's so beautiful. That was one of the most incredible shares that you've shared so far. What is the meaning, dear miracle maker, you listening out there? What is the meaning to your life? And being capable of taking the path less traveled, which your doctor that saved your leg, who 5 a.m. had just read about a procedure. And as medical doctors and as any healer, therapist, person, miracle maker knows, every decision, every choice leads to a cascade of consequences afterwards. Right. Had he taken your leg in that moment, you would have grown your abilities, however necessary, to reach whatever you're able to do now. But the path less traveled, the path that doctor took, had you on this journey. Right. Miracle Maker, if you learned something that morning and someone can use it that day, if you learn something while you're listening to this and someone else that you meet that day can use it, please take this on as part of the meaning to your life, to really truly share what it is that you have a feeling or an understanding of. Whatever it is that you can give in the moment to the person that only you can give right there. And the doctor might have thought, oh my gosh, I only read this much of it, I need to know more. But doctors are trained to trust themselves and have huge egos. Thankfully, for your doctor that trusted this came in the perfect timing.
And I just wanted to say, but that is exactly why there's no benefit in listening to our minds when they covet someone else's journey. When you say, "Oh, I would love to be Brad Pitt or Bill Gates," or when we see magazines at the kiosks or all these things, our mind makes these comparisons. And the one thing that we all should know is that we're all on our own personal evolution or healing paths, and so it doesn't benefit you. Like if someone says, "Would you trade your life with this person?" He has $70 billion, but Asperger's, or this is
Right.
our minds only see the positive things because of popular culture, what we see in the media, and so we're like, "Damn, I'd be happy if I had a Lamborghini, or if my wife was this, I'd be happier," or something. And that's crap, really. I'm so sorry.
Truly made up. It's truly made up. It was made up. I call it Disney movies.
Right,
Somehow
exactly.
the Disney movie idea that we're going to have a prince or a princess, the education, and our system around the world cultivates. If you get a degree, then you are entitled to respect. If you have a particular number in your bank account, then you're entitled. And truly, people that have those things have gotten and understood that was just not necessary for them to have what it is that's truly meaningful.
I always joke in my classes and say, "There's no Pretty Woman 2." Meaning that like our myth of romantic love in terms of overcoming obstacles, or the prince saving the damsel in distress, things like that, it's all a part of a greater fiction that, if you've studied the evolution of both I was joking the other day, if you spoke to feudal lords and told them, in 400 years there's going to be this thing called like capitalism, they would be like, no, like this is the way we do business, and like these serfs are supposed to be toiling there. And there's something greater coming because we're watching the implosion of our belief systems regarding marriage. I mean, I'll make a joke now, and please forgive me, but marriage for life was a fantastic idea in the 13th century when the average lifespan was 28. And now that we live till 87, and in the state of California, over 50% of first marriages end in divorce. I was told that like 85% of second marriages end in divorce. So that ideal, is not so great. And there's a lot of them in our culture that our civilization is based upon, and the ground beneath our feet is shifting. So it's a fascinating time because we're living in hyperspeed, and we get to witness these Titanic. No, isn't that tectonic? Is that it?
Titanic.
Yes,
That's
yes.
it.
Right,
That's
those shifts,
Yes.
shifts, like within our. I mean, if you told my grandmother in the 70s that gay people were going to be able to marry, or that you would go to a wall and get money out of it, or just a black man would be president, like
the internet
right.
20 years ago. The internet, the jobs that exist today did not even exist 10 years ago. The Bitcoin and gold exchange, the way that that's happening. But the biggest thing for us with the realization in marriage, for me, is it gives me stability. For our decision, our decision to get married, I mean, it was a blessing, miraculous in every shape and form, the way that we came together. And previous episodes, Miracle Makers, you've heard us talk about this story. Briefly, I decided I was never going to get married. He decided he was never going to get married. I was going to serve third world countries, never have children, even though that was the secret longing of my heart. I just didn't want, I was so wounded. I didn't want to get hurt. but I labeled that as I don't want to ever hurt anyone else again. Everyone that I went out on a date with, by the second date, is proposing marriage and chasing me across the country in various strange ways. To make a long story short, I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to hurt anybody or be responsible. And that was part of my running from the pain of really, truly loving someone and being able to get hurt. The first time I shared my story with my husband, I did it in third person. The little girl, the wounded child, spoke finally after years and years of being wounded. And for me, marriage and this commitment is stability, and it allows me to fully express who I believe and
That's
know
beautiful.
myself to be.
Right.
My self-image of myself is a 90-year-old grandmother walking down the street. Just if we put, I thought that I could finally show myself when I was a grandmother. My old mental image of having made it was a grandmother being in a bikini because she wasn't afraid to show her skin anymore. It's a funny image.
Interesting.
But I had a hard time because of the abuse that I had had as a child. I was married at 14, left for dead in honor killing, really harsh conditions for a number of years. I ran away from that. And so I didn't want anyone to see me. And yet I was very, very much cute is another way to put it. I physically would have to be perfect before I could leave the house because my inner knowing of myself was to be so broken and so imperfect that if someone looked at me, my inner voice would say, oh my God, I didn't brush my teeth the right way. I must have bad breath, or was so body dysmorphic. I literally thought on the outside was a 300-pound person, even though on the inside and physically I was wearing children's clothing, eating disorders. That whole, through years of service, I was able to and gratefully come to a place where I opened to really be seen. And in our marriage, I get to fully express 365 days a year. I'm a hugger. I hug people. And because I'm married to this beautiful man, I don't limit that expression of hugging and being extra kind to someone, because my self-image is so grounded in knowing this allows me to express my deepest version of my loving self. And so that's the reason, that's the stability. From that, I know where I'm giving love from. And so I'd love for you to express this because it's such an important time frame for the marriage question and love and the meaning. Marriage has no more meaning to it than the meaning that we give it.
Exactly.
A degree has no more meaning to it than what we give it.
Well, I'll just say, I make a joke, with all of my education and a token, I can ride the subway. Information is just, it's infinite. What we really want is transformation, right?
Right.
And so
truly.
if you're transforming each other through your marriage, through being each other's mirror, through creating that stability and that love, that's what your agreement is.
Yes.
Then,
It's
that's
so
beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
That was what I was going to say right there. That's what we do. No, well, I mean, I think, part of it is when we got married, we were blessed enough that both of us were really have a growth orientation and growth mindset.
Yes.
So instead of growing apart, and because we both had marriages early on, which I grew apart from my first wife. And so that ended, but we keep growing together at deeper and deeper levels. And it becomes even more profound.
Yes.
And more loving and more a richer experience because we choose to grow and we're growing together.
And one of the experiences for sharing so deeply in this is I can come home, like the other day one, and this is going to segue into the next topic that I want to share as well. I have a dear client that came to me a couple of times. She was an RN, beautiful. I mean, absolutely gorgeous inside and out of service. And a few years later, 3 years later, she calls me and says, "Oh my God, I'm homeless. I haven't eaten in a couple of days. I'm at such and such location." And I leave the house, and my inner voice, my inner knowing knows I'm going to go find her. I figure out my schedule. I've probably one of the most packed schedules, like everybody in Los Angeles. Very, very packed. I run my day in order to go pick her up. I go pick her up, find her, beautiful, gorgeous girl. She's talking to herself. She's ranting and raving, but and I lovingly call my husband and say, "Oh, by the way, I'm bringing so-and-so home." And I bring her home. And in the course of the next few days, she sleeps, she gathers herself, she's reacquainted with what's meaningful to her. She comes and she's even cooking dinner, and she's so beautiful. She's now communicating with her family. Of somebody a few days later, she comes back and she's not her person in her physical body. She is now shifted again into a psychotic break. It turns out over the past 3 years, she's been jailed a few times, had all of these disorders. And this is someone who is truly seeking, what is the meaning of life? What am I here to contribute? Let me be of service. And on that journey, prior to going to prison, prior to the psychotic break, I believe she tried a mind-altering ceremony. And she's barely 30s, something that in the seeking, she wound up trying probably ayahuasca or DMT or a mind-altering substance. And even though her doctors, the professor that speaks for her said she was the brightest student he'd ever seen in 25 years. And she became violent in our home, and our kids got frightened. And so we asked her to leave because it was late at night, and we just asked her to leave. And the next morning, our kids slept in bed with us. The next morning, I got in the car and I started searching. I started searching the streets, and I myself, as grounded, as stable, I couldn't not cry. I still went through all of the tasks that I needed to do that day, still executed them, but I sent out search parties with every friend that I knew in the neighborhood. And oh my gosh, I realized in the journey over the 24 hours that we couldn't find her that I had lost my brother. Wow. My brother had been missing for 2 years. And I'm going to bring this back to and wrap this. And when he was missing in New Orleans, not in Los Angeles. And I was in dismay during that time. I'd see people that drove cars like his or people that looked like him because he'd visit us before he went missing. And I was sure, and he had a drug problem, self-medicating problem. And I realized this was the same place that I had been in with him. And I began to pray, or I began to do this active meditation miracle mindset. And I released my pain, released the search. I gave it over to source, to creator, to possibility, to mystery. And I took full responsibility for it. I said, "Dear God, it's so interesting that this person is back in our life. And I see now how I created this. I created this in order to heal this with my brother. Right. This was my own wound experience that I was bringing in to our lives to completely bring awareness to and release and give back to you. My brother later passed on, and the body, all of that thing, it's still very tender. But through this person, 20 minutes later, a nurse called from a hospital after that prayer and said, we found this person. This is where she is. And we got the information of where she is to her family, to all the people that were searching for her. It's amazing when we surrendered,
Exactly.
when I surrendered, and when I went into the wondering of, how am I responsible? How did I create this? What is it that this is bringing to me? This really harsh, tough, really weird situation to be in, full responsibility. And that's one of my core beliefs that really, really grounds me and stabilizes me is I'm responsible for everything, how it shows up in my life. And if I'm having a difficulty with accepting it, there's something very meaningful in it for me to get. And so I'd love for your expertise and for us to co-create conversation around this for any of the miracle makers that might be struggling right now.
The thing that really changed the way I saw things, and I was driving with a girlfriend in Sonoma, and we went to this bookstore, and we saw this CD called Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach.
Yeah.
And when I started to learn about the way our consciousness was built and what it does, cling to. Our minds have a negativity bias, right? So for what I teach is that the primary job of our minds is to try to stave off potential future traumas, because we've all gone through, the things that we consider normal during the individuation process, just what we do with babies in this culture and going to school. It's a very traumatic, and we don't let room for that experience. And then later in life, you become your defense mechanisms. Your personality basically is this bundle of reactions waiting for stimuli,
Yes.
those traumas to be reopened in some ways, whether it's a primal abandonment wound that gets re-triggered when you're 35 and you get fired, or whatever it is. Like your mind is sitting there kind of as waiting for bad things to happen. And it keeps us alive, which is great, but it also, I think, hinders us from showing up authentically in our relationships, because we don't want to be vulnerable and get hurt again. So we have a way of being in the world that is defensive in some ways, although I think that people would accuse me of being offensive in some ways. But we really have a hard time being vulnerable. And showing up in a way that we can attract the love and the things that we want in our lives, because we have been so hurt, and I would say that just to go on my own rant, that LA in particular is some sort of vortex for damaged people. A lot of people say they came out here to be in the film business or for other things. And then I always say, well, there's a reason we all live 3,000 miles away from our families, because they trigger us. That's where the initial wounds came from. Sure. So, but everybody I know is from the East Coast, and you're like, I came out here to be an actor, but now I'm a yoga teacher who still enjoys living 3,000 miles away from my family. So I only have to see them at Thanksgiving and maybe a funeral.
Yes. Ram Dass says, if you want to know
everything you're enlightened, go spend the weekend with your family. Yeah.
I love what you brought up. There's the essence of us in the core then there's the wounding that happened. And then out of the wounding, we form these self-defense mechanisms.
Exactly.
The self-defense mechanisms are really present to help us open up the wound to get to our essence core again, in my philosophy of thinking.
Right.
If you fully own full responsibility for every area of your life,
Right.
and whatever triggers you is connected to a wound, connected to a cover-up layer, if we can say, covering up your true essence.
And another way of looking at it is that your soul called in these things because you needed to learn, you needed to have these experiences, which is very, very difficult when it hurts so badly. And I always quote His Holiness the Dalai Lama, because when I saw him and he was asked, who's your greatest teacher, anybody would think he's going to say the Buddha. And when asked who's your greatest teacher, His Holiness said, the Chinese. Who killed 2 million of his people. Yeah. So, it's just a way of looking at things. It's our perception. When the car accident happened, it's not many people can say, thank you for this learning opportunity. Yes. They're saying, save my leg,
Yes.
And so, but 25 years later or 30 years later, we get to look back on these things and we can say, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I wouldn't have been on this path. I wouldn't have learned these things. I would have been an attorney in Westchester, Connecticut with 2.3 kids, Westchester,
Yes.
New York, sorry, with 2.3 kids. And, I'm a different person. So, but we attract these things and we have to surrender, as you say, and not fight what our inner, our higher selves need to learn during these incarnations, or we can't. We just have to say, okay, this is who I am. I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be doing this. I know that because I am here. I am doing that. Even though my mind might say wow, I wonder what Brad Pitt's doing today. I think I'd be good. I think I'd have a lot of fun at Nobu, with Brad Pitt hanging out with Leonardo talking about whatever they talk about. I don't know.
They're probably I wish I could just be someone. No.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I could be that Ira Israel. He had 30 years to just sit.
I don't wish that on anybody.
Although it sounds like you had a very Joseph Campbell-like experience where you
Yes.
just dedicated some time to really delve in and uncover these deeper truths and all the wisdom that's out there that a lot of people don't get exposed to.
I think if you. There's what's it called, the Asperger's scale or whatever, and so when I go down a rabbit hole, I get a little obsessive, and I want to know everything, and so if it's going to take a year to learn something, and read all of Joyce's work, or read or listen to all of Mahler symphonies, and then study these things, or go through Nietzsche, or go through these things, it's okay. That's what I'm doing this year.
I believe humanity, evolution is evolving this way so that we can have deeper experiences. Asperger's, autism, that scale, those personality and traits are so we can go deeper within ourselves, deeper within the wisdom. The way that we had such a broad scope of curiosity, humanity was not being served completely without the depth. And what's necessary now for humanity is the depth of experiences, the ability to feel so deeply. So many people are on medication, more on medication than ever before. So many addicted to television, movies, pornography, unhealthy behaviors that don't have them engaged, going deeper with the meanings of life or what's meaningful to them. It's avoidance at best, and numb and not present, fully checked out.
One of the things that I try to help people do is lead balanced lives. And unfortunately, in our society, because it's the stakes are so high, it's a winner take all. And there's people who earn hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're still comparing themselves to other people instead of to other people who earn that much money, when they can't eat any better, they can't have a bigger plane, they're gonna go to Mars or the moon. I'm sorry, great for them. But still, go out in front of your gate and serve a meal to somebody who needs a meal, and that you're gonna get a lot more fulfillment than flying to Mars or whatever you're doing. So,
I thank you. Thank goodness for Jarvis. Our sound engineer is in studio with us, and he's brilliant for what he can create. We know this already, and there's a few second delay. So it's beautiful.
I get passionate because because literally there are tools that keep people at the high end of their happiness spectrums. We all have them, and unfortunately, through popular culture, a lot of people are misguided, and then they wonder why they have to go on medication or they're not happy. And it's just so simple, we need to learn how to attune to other people, how to be intimate, and how to understand that intimacy is not just sex. Sometimes you washing the dishes and you drying them, or vice versa, is like the height of intimacy. Or walking on the beach, or taking a yoga class together, or doing, there's just we just have this one particular image, as I said, as you said, from Disney, of what is the ideal in our culture. And then a lot of people get disappointed when they don't have that. And
you have to have the ability to feel, to have even a microscopic version of the Disney movie. You have to be able to feel the pain as well as feel the joy. And one of the things that you shared is so beautiful, to just bring in whatever it is that keeps popping up in your mind, Miracle Maker, whatever it is that was your pain of the past. When you heal yourself of this and you begin sharing it, all the future generations get that healing as well, through whatever means you share it, whether it's just with your own children or out to a greater audience. And I have this beautiful saying that I've been saying all week. One of my clients sent it to me because we talk about acorns all the time. And it's a acorn tree is just a nut that stood its ground.
Awesome.
And then if we break the acorn up into the different parts that an acorn is, the cap is connected to the past. The cap on whatever you're here to heal, whatever is meaningful to you, has that little cap on it. It is connected to your family in some level, or your background. But if we allow for there are no mistakes, total acceptance of whatever race or place that you were born in, whatever that looks like, then that second part, the meat of the acorn, that's your current moment. That is the wounding in some ways, in some fashion, some of the things that you have to go through. It's your nourishment as well as what you have to digest in order to get to the real part of the acorn, the seed. And the seed lives inside the acorn. It's miraculous because it can take that one seed and produce infinite number of acorns once standing its ground, standing and fully nourishing that seed. You have to be available to digest whatever aspect is around your seed, and the ways in which you digest that. And we've only got a couple more minutes before we come off air. I'd love for you to, I know your beginner's guide to happiness is one of those ways to digest the seed, what's around it, so that your miraculous seed, what you're here to deliver, miracle makers, no one else can do for you. It's very unique to you. And so I'd love for you to share.
Well, what we were talking about earlier is learning your vocation, what you're doing on planet Earth, and who you are and how you're going to best step into that calling and best serve other people and learn the lessons that you need to learn. That's the type of things that I try to teach people in the workshops and on the retreats and on the DVDs, and I have an app also. But really, it's just about being conscious, as we started the discussion, about what you're doing here, and how you're going to make a difference, and really the keys are just being able to overcome your wounding so that you can be vulnerable and loving and decide what your creation is going to be. And we're living, for us, in a very privileged time where we get to have all this technology, so we can create podcasts, or we can create blogs or DVDs. I mean, it's really, once you figure out, like, oh, I have the soul of a painter, or I have the soul of of a writer, or like what I'm supposed to be doing, and then be able to construct a balanced life so that that's a part of it, so that you can follow your calling. To me, that's how people wake up every morning and say, this is it, this is my life, I own it.
It's a meaningful life.
It's a meaningful life. Thank you so much for being with us, Ira Israel. And baby, anything you want to leave us with?
That's it. We mentioned a lot of things today, but being grateful, appreciating what you have right now, not looking outside yourself for, and especially today, it's an amplified sense of illusion, right? Just totally amplified. It is, like you say, it's very simple, and finding your vocation. Just wrapping up all these things that anyone can start pursuing, and moving towards, to generate a greater degree of happiness and to live a more miraculous life.
That's so beautiful, so beautiful. I would end with know yourself. Above all else, Aristotle's words, know yourself. And so thank you, miracle makers. We love it that you subscribe to us, that you share this podcast and this video. And Ira, Greg, thank you guys so much. Jarvis, thank you. Miracle makers, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, miracle makers.
The past is history, the future mystery. This moment is the